Dove sei?
Non voglio dirti dove sono.
Non hai più controllo su di me.
La sua vita. La sua carriera.
Garantito.
Imagine the fragile line between trust and betrayal shattering in the most isolated and vulnerable. Place imaginably remote cabin where a Hollywood actress seeks refuge from scandal, only to find herself ensnared in a brutal game of survival against someone she once believed in. This is the gripping premise of Trust 2025, a taut psychological thriller directed by Carlson Young, known for her work on Upgraded and The Blazing World. Scheduled for nationwide release on August 22, 2025. The film runs for a lean 1 hour and 26 minutes and is rated R for violence, language, some sexuality, and drug content. Produced by Twisted Pictures and distributed by Republic Pictures. Trust stars Sophie Turner in a riveting lead role, supported by a strong cast, including Katie Sagal, Billy Campbell, Reese Coiro, Peter Mensah, and Forrest Goodluck. The story unfolds, with Sophie Turner's character, a Hollywood starlet, retreating to a secluded cabin after a scandal threatens to destroy her career and personal life. But solitude quickly turns to nightmare when she realizes she is not alone and worse, that the person she trusted most has betrayed her, turning her sanctuary into a prison. The film explores themes of deception, survival, and the devastating consequences of misplaced trust, all wrapped in a tense, claustrophobic atmosphere that keeps viewers on edge. The narrative promises a relentless cat-and-mouse dynamic, where the protagonist must fight not only for her life but also to reclaim her agency and truth. The trailer amplifies the suspense with stark, moody visuals of the cabin's isolated wilderness, contrasting the beauty of nature with the dark undercurrents of danger lurking within. Sophie Turner's performance shines through the trailer's intense close-ups, conveying fear, determination, and vulnerability. The tone is unrelenting, with moments of quiet dread punctuated by sudden bursts of violence and psychological manipulation. Supporting characters, including Katie Sagal and Billy Campbell, add depth and complexity, hinting at layered relationships and hidden motives that enrich the story's tension. Fans of Sophie Turner, known for her compelling roles in Game of Thrones and Dark Phoenix, are eagerly anticipating her return in this challenging role, expecting a performance that balances emotional nuance with physical intensity. Early reactions to the trailer suggest that Trust will appeal to audiences who appreciate tightly wound thrillers with strong female leads and a focus on psychological realism. The film's relatively short runtime promises a fast-paced, gripping experience without unnecessary filler. Speculating on the plot, Trust likely delves into the psychological trauma of betrayal and the fight for survival in an unforgiving environment. The betrayal by someone close adds a personal and emotional layer to the physical danger, making the stakes not just about life and death but also about reclaiming identity and control. Given Carlson Young's directorial style, expect a blend of suspense, character-driven drama, and moments of raw emotional intensity that challenge the audience's perceptions of trust and loyalty. While Trust is a standalone film, it fits well within the current trend of intimate high-stakes thrillers that focus on psychological tension over spectacle. Its production values, combined with a focused narrative and strong performances, suggest a film that delivers both entertainment and emotional impact. The hype around Sophie Turner's starring role and the film's suspenseful premise justifies the anticipation, positioning Trust as a must-watch thriller for 2025. In conclusion, Trust 2025 promises a gripping, emotionally charged thriller that explores the dark consequences of betrayal and the resilience required to survive when the very foundation of trust crumbles. Are you ready to confront the terrifying reality of being betrayed by someone you once loved? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're excited for this intense survival thriller, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more in-depth reviews and cinematic insights.